Greetings, brothers. Welcome to this week's tactics video. With last week's balanced data slate and another 3 months of no changes to Jump Pack Death Company, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to look at this unit, to reevaluate what it can actually do when it's led by quote-unquote the strongest leader, Lamartez, against a bog standard unit of Jump Intercessors that are actually less points. Let's see who comes out on top. Spoiler, you're not going to like the results. Let's dive into this week's tactics video. So thank you so much for being here week on week. Your support is appreciated. My name is John and I am here every week to make you a better Blood Angels player. Today we're talking Jump Intercessors and Jump Death Company. We're going to discuss why Blood Angels players are not playing Jump Pack Death Company. Why is that the case? We're going to do some maths to prove why it's not the case, and we'll discuss usage of these two squads in both Liberator Assault Group and Angelic Inheritors, because that is the two detachments that we have that are actually worth a damn at the moment. So, Death Company Marines with jump packs, right? Before we got our codex, they were solid, right? Every guy could have a power fist, every guy could have an infernal pistol, they'd reroll all their hits in shooting and in melee, and now they have basically none of that, right? So they do not reroll hits in shooting anymore. Out of the 5 guys, you can have 2 Power Fists, an Eviscerator, 2 Chainswords, that's their melee loadout. You can have 1 Plasma Pistol, probably put that on like a Power Fist or Eviscerator guy because you want to keep them alive. An Infernal Pistol, same again, and then 3 Heavy Bolt Pistols. So this, in the moment, is 130 points. No rerolls to hit in the shooting phase, but you do still reroll to hit in the melee combat phase. You cannot fall back in your OC 0 unless you are led by a chaplain. You can re-roll your charge move as well. The thing is, you're probably going to be rapid ingressing these guys and then moving 12 inches, so I think the re-roll of charge is actually kind of weak in the grand scheme of things, and they do have a 6-up Feel No Pain. Standard grenades, fly, infantry, right? The Power Fists are obviously strength 8, the Eviscerator is strength 7, but sustained, so statistically these are very similar. The Eviscerator, is basically a Power Fist, but with 1 less strength. When you math it out, these two weapons are super similar. Alright, they're led by Lamartez, and this is arguably the strongest character to lead Death Company, and why is that? Well, he gives them -1 damage. He has a Crozius that is strength 6 -2/2. He gives lethal hits to the whole unit. So you're rerolling hits, lethal hits. So you are going to proc a number of lethal hits when Lamartez leads them. Him in himself is not that strong. T4, 4 wounds. 4-up Invuln. He also has the Feel No Pain 6-up, and I guess while he's leading them, the squad has 1 OC per guy. So he's seen as the strongest leader, but if you want to lead just 5 guys, that is 240 points, which is notably more expensive than 3 Sangre Guard led by a captain. I think that is much, much better play, or a much, much better choice, and that's what you should be doing in both detachments, right? That's better in Liberator Assault Group and Angelic Inheritors, but if you are so determined to run Death Company, then let's see why they're not that great. Let's take a standard squad of Assault Intercessors with jump packs. These guys basically get a single Power Fist. They can take 3 Plasma Pistols, because it's 1 per 5 and 1 for the Sergeant. And they can take a single, a single Power Fist and 9 guys with Chainswords. So that's what you do. And then they have the Hammer of Wrath rule, which is actually a very strong rule. Each time the unit ends a charge move, every model is within engagement range. So obviously if you're charging with a 10-man squad, it's hard to get all of them within engagement range. And engagement range is base contact / within an inch. So normally, if you were charging, let's say, a Bloodthirster, something big and circular, you could probably get 8 guys, maybe you could lucky and wrap the whole thing and get 10 guys in engagement range. But I think most of the time you make a charge, you probably get 1 or 1.5 rows in engagement range. So 5 out of your 10 models get to roll a dice. On a 4-up, we do mortal wounds, right? So what you get 9 Chainswords, you get 1 Power Fist, you get 3 Plasma Pistols, you get the 7 Heavy Bolt Pistols, and that's 160 points, which is only 30 more points than the 5 Death Company, which is bonkers. And then let's lead them with a Chaplain. So this Chaplain is only 75 points, and if we lead them with a Chaplain, what do we get? Well, we get another guy that gives potential another mortal wound with the Hammer of Wrath ability, because that goes for every unit in your model. You also, on a 4-up, will do mortal wounds, On a 4 up, it's D3. On a 6, it is 3 mortals. So this guy potentially brings up to 4 more mortals. And these mortals go off every fight phase, not just when you're charging, unlike Hammer of Wrath. You're also going to get +1 to your wound roll, which is going to make a big difference because you're already hitting with those Strength 6 chain swords, possibly from Liberator Assault Group, and that one Strength 10 Power Fist. And I think this chaplain should probably always be armed with the Power Fist, right? Because that gives him basically a Strength 10 Power Fist and Liberator Assault Group with 5 attacks. You really, no rerolls to hit here, right? But potential mortal wounds. So if we add the regular chaplain to these guys, we get more mortal wound output. We also get more leadership. We get a ton of chain swords. And think about it this, like this is your wound rolls. So against toughness 5 or less, with those chain swords, you can wound on 2s. Against toughness 6, you will wound on 3s. T7 to 11, you wound on 4s. And I guess if you're T12 up, you really don't want to be attacking T12 up with chainswords. You're still winning on 5s. It's not the worst. And this combo is actually 235 points. So this is 5 points cheaper than the 5 Death Company with Lamartas. Now, if you're not already seeing a problem, then I'm going to highlight it more for you. But, so you would have... Just imagine if those 10 Jump Assault Intercessors with the Chaplain charged Lamartas in 5 Death Company. How many do you think would even be left after the mortal wounds procced? You know, and then you're going to be hitting them with, what did we say, 45 chain swords that wound T5s or less on 2s? Maybe you're starting to see the problem. Anyway, both these attacks, so the Chaplain's going to give you +1 to hit, which is essentially like Lance. The Lamartas is going to give you lethals. Now, there's a stratagem in both detachments, Liberator Assault Group and Angelic Inheritors, that can give you lethal and Lance. My problem with that stratagem is you need that stratagem for your Sanguinary Guard. You cannot be using this stratagem on your Death Company because, let's face it, the Sanguinary Guard do not have great strength. They're Strength 6 or Strength 8, depending on which detachment you're running. So most of the time, they're going into any sort of elite infantry. They're going to want lethals and lance, and they're going to need it much, like, they need that to make them into like a significantly killy unit. So this stratagem is not often available. At least that's what I found when I was playing Death Company. And when I won the GT in the summer, please take a shot, because you have to take a shot every time I mention that I won a GT. I was doing exactly that. I was running a big unit of Sanguinary Guard with Dante, and they were getting this stratagem, and both my small 5-man Death Company, back when they could take all the Power Fists, were led with a Chaplain, so that they had +1 to wound on those Strength 10, to basically mean that those Death Company were very good into armor. Now, I don't think we can do that anymore. I've actually tried to run the Chaplain with the 5-man Death Company. We'll come back to that at the end of the video. But before we get any further, if you are enjoying any of the content I put in the channel, I would love it if you would subscribe. I am trying desperately to hit 20,000 subscribers, and apparently, if everybody subscribed, I'd be actually much more closer to 25,000, but a bunch of you people are watching every week, potentially, and just not subscribing. That's fine, but it would mean a lot to me if you would consider subscribing. Anyway, let's move on. I try not to get bogged down in stuff like that. Right, 10 Jump Assault Intercessors v 5 Death Company with -1 damage. So Lamartas is seen as the strongest because he has this -1 damage rule, but it's only going to kick in against 2 or more damage, right? It does nothing against 1 damage weapon. So if you do get attacked with chain swords, the Death Company with their jump packs would survive 48 successful hits, whereas the Jump Assault Infantry would survive 80 successful hits. And what I mean by a successful hit would be, like, if you take that 80, chain swords are going to typically wound on 4s, so that would be 20. I'm going to typically save on 4s, that would be 20. So there is my 20 wounds, right? So hit those 5 Death Company 48 times, they are wiped. Hit those Jump Assault Intercessors 80 times, they are wiped. That's a 66% increase against 1 damage weaponry. If we look at the 2 damage weaponry, you can see this is where the Jump Death Company will excel with Lamartas. They will actually be 20% stronger against like Strength 6 Eviscerators than the Jump Assault Intercessors. Then if we talk about like autocannons, the Jump Assault Intercessors are much more survivable because damage is wasted against them, and you know, like, it's just double the number of bodies. So they're just much more survivable against 3 damage autocannons. If we took them against like 8 bound with those 3 damage lacerators, again, the Jump Assault Infantry just much more survivable. Almost not quite 2-to-1, and I guess the reason they're not quite 2-to-1 is because the Death Company do have that 6-up Feel No Pain, which is kicking in occasionally. But you can see here, Lamartas is good against 2 damage weaponry. He's not really great against much else, right? So if you're playing against an enemy with 2 damage weaponry, sure, you're 20% more survivable than jump assault intercessors, but here's the thing. Your opponents know that. So they're probably just going to go, that's the -1 damage squad, so let's attack it with either 1 damage or 3 damage weapons, and let's put my 2 damage weapons somewhere else that will be more efficient, right? Any good player that you play against is going to know that and can probably maneuver their army to deal with that to a certain extent. Maybe there's a situation where they have to attack you, and cool. Okay, so in this one situation that happens like every so often, Lamarta's -1 damage is cool. In our community, we've often talked about the 6-up Feel No Pain that the Death Company have, and it's just not meaningful, in my opinion, within the game. You can see here for the increased points you're paying for these Death Company, you were paying 130 for 5 versus 160 for 10. The 6-up Feel No Pain is not meaningful. It's not helping those guys stay alive. It's not worth it point for point. Even when led by Lamarta's, who is arguably like the meta choice with that -1 damage, you're better off just taking Jump Assault Intercessors. It seems like, right? But maybe their damage will be better, right? 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 Alright, let's talk about damage with a sword, or chainsword in this case. Fly me closer. I want to hit them with my sword. Right, Liberator Assault Group. Melee unit charging. Here is your Death Company led by Lamarta's. 2 Power Fists, 1 Eviscerator, 2 Chainswords, Lamarta's. Here are your damage numbers against, like, an Orc, a Death Company Terminator, a Death Guard Terminator, a Hive Guard, a Bloodthirster, and a Land Raider. And, like, that's just the raw damage that these things will do, with rerolling hits, with lethal hits, right? That's all calculated in. Jump Assault Intercessors, exactly the same. The 1 Power Fist, the 9 Chainswords, the Chaplain's Power Fist. Remember, +1 to wound here, no lethals, no rerolling hits, because they don't have those rules. And let's put them side by side. So if we put them side by side against Orcs that basically only have 1 hit point, you would expect all those Chainswords to be ahead, 44% ahead. Against Death Guard Terminators, Death Company Lamarta's, 12% ahead. Against Hive Guard, Death Company again, 20% ahead. Against a Bloodthirster, I guess just weight of Chainswords is going to be slightly better. And then against a Land Raider, Death Company ever so slightly ahead, right? So they are slightly ahead in 3 of the 3 categories out of 5. Cool. Remember, these guys are 5 points more expensive, so that is 2% more expensive overall. But then let's just remember that the Jump Assault Intercessors can actually deal up to 14 mortal wounds every time they finish a charge in engagement range, right? Statistically, if they manage to finish all their models in engagement range, they will do 7.5 mortal wounds. So if you add 7.5 to this left column, then the Death Company numbers basically look pretty crap straight away. And if you did add 7.5 to the left column, then the Jump Assault Intercessors and the Chaplain are basically one-shotting an 18 wound Bloodthirster, right? 10.92 plus 7.5 is more than 18, so he is dead. And the Death Company are leaving that Bloodthirster alive on 8 wounds to attack them back. And this was the more expensive squad, right? And spoiler, if a Bloodthirster ever does get to attack Death Company, you're not gonna, -1 damage ain't gonna do dick, right? Like, I haven't played against a Bloodthirster for a while, but they might get as many as like 16 attacks. They probably -2 damage, and then I think if they survive combat, they do like up to 8 mortal wounds to unit in engagement range. So trust me, it is much better to be killing the Bloodthirster and not leaving him alive, and that's what the Jump Assault Intercessors will be doing. So if only 4 models, let's say only 4 models out of your 11-man squad of Jump Intercessors can statistically end in engagement range, then you get 3 mortal wounds, right? Because you would roll 4 up 4 times. 2 of them will be 4 ups. That gives you 2 mortal wounds, and then the Chaplain activates. Statistically, on average, he does 1 mortal wound every engagement round. Like, that's just, it kicks off 50% of the time, and most of the time it's more than 2. But if you average it down, it's just 1 mortal. So if you can only finish 4 models in engagement range, the Jump Assault Intercessors are literally always better. And they're always better by a good margin, right? The second you can finish more in engagement range, then they're way better. So hold on. Like, let's just recap, right? They're more survivable. They have better OC. They do more damage. And that's before we've even talked about, like, the Jump Assault Intercessors could actually benefit from Oath of Moment as well. Death Company cannot benefit from Oath of Moment. And All right, let's talk about shooting, because there's more to talk about. 7 heavy bolt pistols and 3 plasma pistols. I think the shooting for both squads is generally bad. Death Company's shooting actually used to be good. Maybe that's the problem. It used to be good, now it's bad. But 7 bolt pistols and 3 plasma pistols, we're just going to shoot them at like Marines and Death Guard Terminators. You can see the numbers, nothing to jump about. And then 3 heavy bolt pistols and a plasma pistol and an infernal pistol against the same targets. They're basically the same. So getting that extra infernal pistol, when occasionally it actually does something. I think I included the absorber bolt pistol for Lamartas here as well. Bear in mind, I replaced the bolt pistol on my chaplain with a power fist, so I don't have a pistol on my chaplain. But the damage is... So the jump intercessors technically do more damage than the Death Company. The only time the Death Company could do more damage with the pistols is if they got within half range and they got that infernal pistol within half range. I didn't overcharge the plasmas because it just didn't seem worth it. But you can overcharge plasmas if you want. But anyway, if you're not overcharging the plasmas and you're not within 3 inches, because that's actually kind of hard to do, then the jump marines are better again. If you get within 3 inches, if by some miracle you hit wound and they fail the save on the infernal pistol, then I guess you're in a better situation with the Death Company. I don't even think that's worth 5 extra points, even if they were all evenly matched, which they are not. So losing the rerolls to hit has made the Death Company shooting pretty meaningless. Like you're going to pick 1 wound off a marine. It's worth noting that you also need to be in 6 inches to match. Due to them. Oh yeah, and if you're not within 6, if you don't manage to be within 6, then the jump intercessors do more damage because their pistols have decent range, and the infernal pistol, again, as I said, only has 6. Right? So you need to be within 6 to even keep up. You need to be within 3 to have a chance of being ahead. So the shooting is negligible. At least the jump intercessors will kill a marine, whereas the Death Company will not. And if we talk about Angelic Inheritors, right? Because like some people are saying, like, what about the Death Company Angelic Inheritors? Then they could reroll 1s to wound. The army rule of reroll 1s doesn't actually combo all that well with the Death Company because they already get to reroll all hits in the fight phase. So the jump intercessors are actually going to get more meaningful buff here, right? Because they're going to get to reroll 1s in both hit and wounding. Whereas the Death Company are only going to get an addition to the reroll 1s in wounding. So you're going to lose 1 attack per model if you go Angelic Inheritors. And if we look at like the Bloodthirster example, like the Death Company, with the less strength now in Angelic Inheritors, you know, your Power Fist drops to strength 8, your Eviscerator drops to 7, your Chainswords drop back to 4. These are your wound percentages for the Death Company squad. So lethal hits would be very important because you have less hits and you don't have +1 to wound, which makes things a bit rough. The Jump Assault Intercessors in this situation would still actually have a 58% chance to wound the Bloodthirster because with the Power Fist and with the Sergeant's Power Fist, right? Because they would be Strength 8 with +1 to wound and then reroll 1s. The Chainswords would actually do slightly better as well because they would be normally wounding on 6s, but +1 to wound makes it 5. Reroll 1s gives them a 38% wound chance. So the +1 to wound would help you a lot more with the Jump Intercessors, but you will lose 10 attacks, but if you actually work out statistically the number of hits, you actually only lose 2 hits, because the reroll 1s make up for the fact that you were only hitting 66% of the time in Liberator Assault Group. So like I talked before, is there an argument for attaching a generic Jump Chaplain to a squad of Death Company and just giving him a Power Fist and just getting the +1 to wound? And I have tried that, and that is cheaper, I guess. Like that is 200, I think, and 5 points. But my opinion of that is the Death Company don't have the damage to kill units anymore, right? We saw that on like slide 2. Maybe not slide 2, but we saw that on the slide, right? Like they are just not wiping you anything big anymore, right? Like if you're trying to kill a Land Raider, they're not killing it. You're trying to kill a Bloodthirster, they're not killing it. So basically, anytime they need to go after a really tough big target, they're not killing it, even if you've got lethal hits, even if you've got +1 to wound. And when they do not kill it, their survivability is poor. We compared them against the Jump. They have worse survivability than like standard, cheap, 80 point per 5 Jump Marines, right? Just because they're so expensive to include. So running the generic Chaplain, which I have done with the Death Company multiple times since the since the codex. Like, I do not recommend that at all. I do not think that's a strong combo. Basically, as soon as I switched from that to the 3 Sangre Guard and the Captain, I never looked back. Like, that is just a much better squad. At least the Sangre Guard have -1 to hit and wound, and they have a 4-up invuln, and like I said, the 6-up feel no pain. I feel like with the Death Company, with the 6-up feel no pain, you only ever roll 6s when you don't need it. If you're winning a game, you might roll a boatload of 6s. Anytime you need them to make some 6-up feel no pains, it just doesn't happen. So I generally do not recommend the generic junk captain with the Death Company. It feels underwhelming when I've used it. And if we take Angelic Inheritors and look at damage against the Bloodthirster, if you were going to use Angelic Inheritors, you are going into the Bloodthirster because you are lower strength, because you have less attacks, you're only actually going to do almost 8 damage to the Bloodthirster with this 230-point squad. Whereas the Jump Assault Intercessors, they're not going to be the greatest in Angelic Inheritors. They're only going to do 7.24. But then, depending on where you go to, you could do, I mean, like, you can do 14 mortal wounds if you spike. You're not going to, but 7, if you get ever, like, if they have a Bloodthirster and he is within 12 and you can wrap around the whole model, you are statistically going to do 7 mortal wounds to him. So that could even easily, so if your point of damage swings up 1, or your mortal wounds swing up 2, then you have a dead Bloodthirster. Whereas this Death Company have literally no chance of doing that. Or, saying that, you might be able to shoot that Bloodthirster with a friggin' Vindicator tank, take a wound or 2 off of him, and then finish him off with the Jump Assault Intercessors. Or throw grenades. Yeah, I mean, if the Jump Assault Intercessors can throw grenades, then that's almost a guaranteed kill, right? 7 plus 3 from the grenades plus 7 from this, that's 17. He only has 18 wounds. The tiniest little swing there, and he is dead. So it's just like, in every situation you look at, these Jump Death Company are just not good at 130 points. I mean, you could have a whole other argument about the characters not being that good or the characters being overcosted, but I think for 130 points, I don't see how you run them. Honestly, I don't see how you run them. I don't run massive squads of Jump Assault Intercessors, and I do think if you want to run Death Company, the way that people have said that the best way to run the Death Company is Lamartus plus 10. And I guess if you're running Lamartus plus 10, you get, what, like another Eviscerator and another Power Fist, and you get five Chainsword guys in total, and those Chainsword guys can almost become the chaff when you lose some models. So I think you probably can run Lamartus plus 10 Death Company, and it's possibly okay. Like, I think that's the one way you can run it, but 5-man squads, they're just too damn expensive. And even that 10-man squad, having played it, I think it, like, 10-man led by Lamartes isn't that survivable, and they're hungry for your Red Rampage, which you need elsewhere from the Sangre Guard, because the Sangre Guard just don't have great strength, and the Sangre Guard are just more reliable, led by Dante or led by Captain. So, like, the last 2 data slates have essentially left these refresh Death Company characters, Lamartes and Asteros, to rot. Like, along with the Jump Death Company. We've seen a massive shift in the Blood Angels meta away from the Death Company. I mean, that's what Bloodless Angels was like, put the Death Company back in the box and just don't play them. I don't really know how you're supposed to play Death Company competitively. For the first year or so of this 10th edition, Death Company were like the only competitive choice, and now they're just bad. It's important to note that if your enemy can ever precision your leader as well, because there is like Emperor's Children running around with crap loads of precision, Master of Executioner from Khorne rerolling everything precision, Solaxi precision rerolling everything. Then all of a sudden they take out your character, your Death Company can't fall back, they're OC 0, and all of that is super problematic, right? Especially if that's your only chaplain in your army list, then you've just got like 10 OC 0 guys that can't ever fall back out of combat. Yes, like I said, I believe the only combo might be Lamartes with 10. You get a slight points reduction in running 10, but I just don't think their AP is great anymore. They're often underwhelming, and for 350 points, I think it's going to be mega hard to recoup their costs in a single turn. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's hard to play Dante plus 6 Sangre Guard, because that's such an expensive squad. If you do not manage to, like, jump in and kill 350 points, which in reality is actually pretty difficult to do, then you don't have a ton of survivability. Dante and the Sangre Guard at least, have a 2-up save, have a 4-up invuln, Whereas the Death Company just don't. They're on a 3-up with a 6-up feel no pain. If you're playing something that's got a lot of plasma guns or anything, those guys are just evaporating quicker than you can say Death Company. But honestly, tell me in the comments below at what point value you would start playing Death Company. I know a few people still think that the 10 plus Lamartas is good. But I'd really like, I think Blood Angels are strongest when you're playing minimum size squads. But based on this, I actually think 10 Jump Intercessors with a Chaplain is a very competitive pick. 235 points. That sounds a lot better than the 350 that you would have to play for Lamartas. I think I would happily run like 2 10-man Jump Intercessor squads led by Chaplains, put them both in Strategic Reserve. That fits in nicely. Rabid Ingress turn 2, Rabid Ingress turn 3. That's a crap load of damage. And, you know, it's super reliable damage. Lots of mortal wounds. Probably can actually wipe some enemies, which the Death Company really struggled to do. And then if you wipe those enemies, I think they would probably actually more likely wipe like a Bloodthirster than the 10-man Death Company, actually, or a Land Raider, right? Just because of the mortal wounds. So wipe those enemies, then gives you a chance to push on and fight another enemy in the following turn or something like that. So yeah, tell me what you think should be done to try and get these Death Company fieldable again in the comments. For me, I'm not interested in them right now. Jump Marines, Sangre Guard. I think that is the meta for the next 3 months. Maybe in 3 months' time we'll get some changes to the Death Company and or the 2 detachments. The Death Company... Oh, that was one thing I was remembering. Yes, one of the reasons Death Company were so good in the codex... In the index, sorry, rather than the codex, was you had fight on death for 2 CP. So as long as you were sitting on 2 CP, the enemy could not charge the Death Company without taking massive losses, right? Because you led them with a Chaplain to get +1 to wound. So you were like, the second you get targeted, like by orcs, for example, I'm fighting on death with 10 Death Company guys, all with Power Fist. You're just losing your entire squad in return. So, like, there have been so many negative changes towards Death Company, and all they got is like a 3... I mean, you do the maths here. All they got is like a 5% drop in points cost. Is that right? Maybe 6%, because it went from 140 to 130, I believe. So for the 6% drop in points cost, they lost so much. So if anyone asks you why they're not playing Death Company at the moment, link them to this video. Maybe by showcasing all this, someone in the GW rules team will be like, oh yeah, Death Company aren't all that right now. Yeah, like they're not like, if we were doing a tier list, Jump Death Company for me, they're like a C. Like, I have a lot of Jump Death Company, probably have like 40 models. I'm not even remotely interested in fielding any of them. I don't even think you can field 5. Like, just wasted points, man. They're just not good enough. Yeah, that's it. That's this week's Tactics video. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't watch last week's video about how I am setting up an Angelic Inheritors list, then you can click it over here. If you are buying any models here in the UK, please do support the channel on Element Games by clicking the affiliate link below, or in the US, support me on War Game Portal, or come over onto Patreon, and for the price of a cup of coffee, you support every video I make, and I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. Thank you so much for liking. Hopefully some of you guys that weren't subscribed think now that I have done something useful, and if there is any Blood Angels videos that you want to see, leave me a comment, because I make one every week. So thanks again, have a great week. By the blood are we made strong, my friends. Peace.